everybody, welcome to All Stars. I'm Sal. That's Josh. We're talking about San Diego Comic-Con. We just got back. So far, no COVID.
Yeah, no COVID. Oh man, look at you. You opened up with COVID.
I know, right? Yeah, YouTube's like,
Well, talking about
demonetized.
San Diego Comic-Con and COVID. No, knock on wood. No COVID here.
I only say it because last year I got it bad. And
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
first and only time, and it just ruined me. I was
man.
on my ass for 3 weeks, and nobody wants to hear about it because they heard about it for 3 years. So let's.
Oh my god. Well, you and I. It's funny. Like last year, you and I only ran each other really one time,
Yes.
and we walked the length of the hall together because I had to go to a meeting.
Yep.
This time we had a plan. You and I were texting.
Yep.
We were like, gonna hang out. We might even record something. I had this thing in my head. I was like, we should just like walk the floor together and like look at shit together.
Oh, I love that.
You and I never hung out. We never hung out.
Nope.
We did talk a few times. We ran into each other and we talked a few times, but we never actually got to sit down and hang out or like do what we were talking about doing. Because I even texted you. I was like, hey, let's actually like maybe record something and splice it in there, whatever. You were like, I was thinking the same thing. Never happened. Never happened. I remember one time I was running away from somebody. I was avoiding somebody, and I was cutting through probably one of my favorite places at the.
Same.
Don't say where it is. Keep it a secret.
Exactly. No, it was a little too crowded this year, and I'm like, oh no, people are finding out. So
they found out. Well, years ago, Tom King and I, my first name drop of the recording. So Tom King and I, we were at this. It was right after the button had come out. So it was back in 2017. They had just built that, and so we went there on Tuesday night, I think. So before anyone else got there, Tuesday night, and we had drinks there. There was nobody there, and it was really late. It was like right before closing. I mean, they literally closed like the shutters while we were there.
Yeah.
And we had tacos and we had drinks, and we were like, yeah, this is really great. They just built this, man. This is gonna be like our secret hideaway. How you go, and it's like, oh my god, I think every single person here knows about this place. But yeah, so you and I ran into it there, and that was probably the longest conversation we had. But even that, I was like, I'm actually late for something else.
I have to go.
I was like, I have to run now. But yeah, I mean, this convention was crazy. Like, I should have showed you my schedule before we got there, and you would have seen how crazy it was. Where it was like every half hour to every hour was spoken for. Like every minute of every day, I had something going on. 8 in the morning until 9, 10 o'clock at night. And because at one point we were like, oh, we'll hang out on this one night.
Yeah.
After dinner, and then I texted you at like 10:45, and I'm like, we're literally just sitting after dinner.
Yeah, the text we got, the initial text I think was like between 7 and 8. You're like, dude, I'm gonna get some dinner. It's gonna be great. And then we'll meet afterwards. I'm like, sounds fantastic. 10:50. You're like, we just sat down to eat. And I'm like,
yeah, it's true. One point, so I was having a dinner meeting, right? Which is we always have. Like everything is always like a dinner meeting.
Dude, I didn't have anything to do with this show, and I had nothing but dinner meetings.
Yeah, dude, it was so funny because I was laughing at myself about this when you were like, I'm just going to the show to have some fun. I'm not doing anything, but that is never reality. Like you're always, you get pulled into stuff, you have conversations.
Big time.
So I was having a dinner meeting, and Scott Snyder was doing his like his class dinner, right? Like people from the Substack.
For the Substack, yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, hey, can you show up? Would you like to come and hang out for a minute? And I was like, he had actually told me this a couple days before. He was like, would you mind coming and saying hi? And I was like, yeah, of course, but not until 10 o'clock. I was like, I have a dinner meeting, and it'll probably end around 9:45. And I was like, oh, that restaurant is like a block away from where I'm having my dinner, so I'll totally make it.
Awesome.
And it was like, and then my dinner ended, and then I'm like on the streets of San Diego talking with the people I had dinner with, and that goes on forever. I look at my phone, and it's like 10:15, and I was like, their dinner was starting at 8, so I'm like, oh, they must be done. But I'm like, you know what? It's literally right there. Yeah. I'm gonna go. I'll go. So I walk down there, and when I get there, it's a huge table of people. I mean, we're talking about it's got to be like 20, easily more than 20 people at this gigantic table. And Scott's standing at one end, so I go over to him, I start talking, and then I realize something. And this is like 10:30.
Yeah.
They are just now getting their food.
Oh my god.
Their food is just not coming to the table. I'm like, they got there at 8.
Yeah.
And they're just not getting the food. I was like, oh my god. So I talked to Scott for like 10, 15 minutes, and then I was like, dude, your food's gonna get cold. Go eat.
Right.
And I was like, I'm out.
Yep, you got the cameo in though. You got it in.
Yeah, I got it in, but it's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm like, no, I'm done. yeah, with this con, it was just like every minute, every day, dude. And it was then what happens is so before I left, it got so bad that I had to pull out a whiteboard, like one of the mini whiteboards in my office.
Yes.
I had to pull it out and map it out to make sure I was getting it correct. Like
Totally.
this is going here, this is going there, and I'm like, okay, I got this figured out. But then once you're there, you start getting texts from people that are like, "Do you have 15 minutes?"
It's like I
Like
always have 15
literally,
minutes, you know. Yeah.
what's that?
I always have 15 minutes and then it
Yeah,
becomes
or
an
then it
hour.
dominoes up, and then it's like, "Oh, can you meet at this? Can you meet at that?" And it's like, yeah. So actually, one of the things that really kind of I don't say bummed me out about this convention. I even with that, I still got home and realized how many people I did not see at the
Right.
show. There were friends that I did not even see a blink of. Like Tom King and I saw each other on Thursday morning for breakfast, but then I saw him on Friday afternoon for like 5 minutes. Never saw him again. Never saw him again. He called me on Tuesday and he's like, "Dude, look what happened." I'm like, "I
What
want to tell
happened?
you, it's Comic Con, man."
Yeah.
But then it was also like, then I started seeing these videos of people walking the floor, and I'm like, next year I have to spend like a dedicated 3 hours, like
Yeah.
really, and be hard about it. Of like, let me just walk the floor and
Right.
look at like when I was that way back in the day when I first started going, because I've been going since 1995. Like I've gone to every single San Diego since 1995. So then I would find time. And then when I was having a small press table, and I was just starting out breaking in and trying to make my own comic books,
Yeah.
I would get there at like 7 in the morning. And because I had an exhibitor badge, so you can get in
Oh
before
yeah,
the
you
show
get in
opens.
early. Yeah,
Because you
that's
just
right.
set up, right?
Exactly.
So what I would do is, but one of the rules is you're not allowed to
Like
walk around.
yeah, you can't like wait in lines and stuff. You can't
Yeah,
start
you can't do
lines.
any of that.
There
You
was an
have to go to
announcement.
your
I was there
yeah.
early and I heard like there was they're like, please stop waiting in lines. There's no lines right now.
Yeah, you can't be hanging out, right? But I just wanna
Exactly.
see stuff. Like, that's a
Exactly.
big part. I just wanna see stuff, like, you just wanna have a moment where you go I don't even know if they did this year. Like, for a long time, Lego would always build some giant Lego of a DC
Yeah.
character, and you just go look at it. Just be like,
Right.
"That's cool," and I'm not being shoved by, like, a million people at the same time.
Exactly.
This year,
Exactly.
I didn't do any of that. So, yeah, I used to do that. I would go in the morning, look at stuff, but so I haven't been able to do that in a while. So this one, I was just like, "Man, I didn't get to go look at stuff." Like, I never even saw the Marvel booth. I went by the Image booth and the Skybound booth. I never even saw the Lego booth, or I saw it from a distance, and I saw they did that cool like blockbuster thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never actually got to see it. So this was the year I didn't. I would say I literally only saw the path to the DC booth
Right.
and back. And at one point, and this is actually the question, one of the things I was going to ask you about.
Mm.
So at one point, I got to the DC booth, and they were like, I got there like a half hour early. Oh no, okay, so here's this was the mistake I made. So at this convention, and this actually is my question for you. So at this convention, and I haven't done this in a while. Actually, that's not true. I think I do this every year. There are exclusives at the convention.
Yes.
There are
Yes.
things that are at the convention that are cool that I want. And it's hard to do those things now because I can't wait in line for 2 hours.
No, that's right. You'd have to like
It's like I
ask
can't.
somebody to do it for you.
Yeah, I don't, that's the case. Sometimes it's like with the companies we work with, like, hey, can you help me out? And then there are times where it's like, hey, can I get the hookup with this? But the funny thing with this one in particular was all the stuff I wanted, no hookups. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
Didn't know anybody. And one of the things I wanted was something was from Mondo, and I
Mm.
used to have a Mondo hookup,
Well, Mondo
and
has been completely gutted now, so
well, so that's the thing, right? So here was what it was. So I actually found myself. I had a window of about 45 minutes before signing. I don't remember why. I think I was just like, this is an actual window, and I can actually make it to the booth. Oh, it was at night. Now I remember this. Yeah. Oh
hmm,
my god. I actually had a moment. So it was Wednesday. So Wednesday, like I actually like things just worked out where it was like I
yeah.
have 45 minutes. I can see if this one thing. Actually, it was like two things I wanted, but this one thing is available to get at the Mondo booth. And so I get in the convention center and I haul it to the Mondo booth, and I get there and I'm like, what the hell? But here's the trick: I forgot that Mondo got bought by Funko.
Right.
So that means the Mondo booth, which was on this side of the convention,
Oh
is
god.
now at the Funko booth, which is the exact opposite side of this gigantic convention center. So I
Yeah,
had
and
to
that's gonna
run.
take you 30 minutes to walk.
Dude, I because I know this convention so well, I actually know the path to take to get to where I gotta go faster, but it's still
Nice.
like It's still like, oh, you're the guy. So I got over there, went by the DC booth, and I was just like, hey, I'll see you guys in a little bit. I have a mission. I got over there. There was a line.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went around to the front, and I was just like looking, like, there it is. Okay. I say to a guy at Funko, I'm like, hey, I only want that. Is there a line I have to get, like a specific line I have to get?
Right.
And he was like, you'll be fine. We'll have plenty. Go get in the other line. Go get in this line over here.
Uh-huh.
I get in the line, and then immediately, like, I get in line, I was like happy. And I'm like, this line's not bad. This I could see this line moving in 30 minutes. If it doesn't, that's okay. I'm not gonna make it. That's okay. So I get over there, get in line, just like, waiting. And then immediately somebody was like, yo, this line is capped. You cannot get in this line.
Oh.
They were like, nope. And I was like, dude, you tell me what to do. Like, I have no.
I'm not gonna have a meltdown. Yeah, exactly.
And then one of the guys was like, they're doing it where every half hour to every hour they cap it until it starts to dilute, and then they let people in.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I will try. So they came back like an hour later, maybe an hour and a half later, and they were like, no, it's gone. Not that it's sold out. They were just like, we're not reopening the line. But it was something that was only available on Wednesday night. And so I was like, oh, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
And then immediately went on eBay and bought it. Like walking back for the thing, I was like, dude, all right, whatever. How much more is it? I guess that's the small price to pay when I having to wait in the line. Sure. Boop.
That's true.
And it's actually supposed to arrive any minute.
Oh, nice. What is it? Oh, God. Now I got to know. What the hell?
You know what it is? Dude, so what was something... I'm curious how much you know about Mondo's exclusives were, because I feel like it's a very... If you know me, we talked about this. So...
Oh, yeah.
It's something
was
very
it a hook thing?
What? Was there a hook thing, too?
Was it a hook?
No, dude. It was a recreation of Spider-Man 2099 #1. It was a giant recreation of the cover, and it even has the foil on it.
No. Oh,
it's even the foil. It's even the foil.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw it from a distance, and I was looking at it, and I actually asked them. I was like, "Can I see it?" They had bought it, and I was like, "Can I see it?" And they showed it, and I was like, "I have to have this thing.
Yeah,
I have to get it." And then
that's awesome.
They did one that was Jim Lee's like X-Men #3 cover. They did a couple things. You're just like, dude, these are so cool. I have to get one. So that was it. But then the other thing I really wanted was the Mattel made a Steven Spielberg toy.
Yes, I've seen it. It comes with a director's chair and everything. Yeah,
yep. Those were the two exclusives of the con. So my question for you was, there's other things that I got. Like DC gave us. They made pins for us.
Oh, cool.
They made a. This is a Nightmare Stone from Night Terrors, and then they made a Dawn DC one. They made one that was like Dead Man and Batman, but it's like Batman's face is dripping his Dead Man underneath. They made those, and so like I'm waiting to get those, but I was able to get at least the Nightmare Stone. They're gonna send me the rest, which is also super surreal. Whenever they do stuff, whenever they make stuff based on stuff we've come up with, it's
you gotta have it.
But yeah, also I'm like, I have to have that. But that was my question for you. Were there any exclusives here or ever realistically, but at this one that you were like, I have to have that?
I mean, I'm not really plugged into that scene too deeply, but occasionally, okay. So yes, there are exclusives, there are con exclusives that I have needed to have this year. No, but normally I do, which is my wife got way into. Well, she got me way into Star Wars Christmas ornaments.
Dude, yeah,
from Hallmark, and there's like this amazing window of time. Like they started out and they were like, yeah, they're from like 1997, 2000. They're gonna look a little silly. That's not Harrison Ford. That's a potato in a stormtrooper suit, whatever. But then, for whatever reason, they got some sculptor who just was like, "This is my passion," and they made like they made a Maunadon. They made like so many incredible looking things, and I was like, every year, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to have this, and so. The tree has become this monument to like stuff that we love. So,
nice.
In 2017, they made this incredible Jaws ornament where he's got 3 barrels embedded into him by Quint. And I'm like, I gotta have these. I have 2 different, two of the exact same Ecto ones, but one plays the song and the other one plays the sounds.
Oh my god, I love this. I love all of it.
Friggin' they made we love Lord of the Rings, like the movies and of course the books, but like mostly the movies. And like for The Hobbit, they released Gandalf the Grey. And it's like, well, I can just pretend this is from Lord of the Rings. I don't have to worry about The Hobbit. And so I got that, but that came out like 6 years ago, and I'm like, what is the matter with these guys? Like, where is the Lord of the Rings license? You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine like an entire tree where it's like, it's Treebeard, it's Gandalf, it's Saruman the White, it's, all the hobbits, like the ring, you know what I mean? They make these metal ones, a one ring. Are you kidding me? Come on. But this year they made a Legolas, and I'm like, done. But the exclusives this year, there's almost always a Star Wars exclusive at Con. And I missed my white whale is they did the Bounty Hunters at one point, and the con exclusive for New York and San Diego. It's always the same for both conventions.
That's good that they do it twice at least.
Exactly, you get another bite of the apple. But like Zuckuss and Forlom, who are two. It's a bounty hunter and his bounty hunter droid companion.
I know what they are.
Yeah. Okay. I wasn't sure how esoteric we're getting with it, but I really
I have a really funny Star Wars story to tell you sometime.
Oh, great.
I might tell it to you off air, but yeah,
okay.
I have a funny
cool. But I really want those. They're $200 on eBay. I'm like, nope. Just
dude, let me tell you, like because basically what you're paying for is at that point you're paying for
missing.
Did I have to wait in line?
Oh yeah. Like, well, that was I just missed it. I just didn't know. You know what I mean? Like I was at that con.
Yeah, that's always the bummer.
Seeing them at the cons I was at, and I'm like, oh, I just could have gone.
Like, yeah, dude, that stuff always bums me out when you find out. And actually, that was what this one. Like, Image had a bunch of exclusives this year that I missed out on, and literally, it's like I didn't go to the booth.
Yeah.
And I wanted to. Like, I had this plan of attack, and it's just like, every once in a while you just miss stuff, and it is a bummer when you find out, like, dude, I could have gotten that or whatever. When some companies have those windows where it's like online exclusives, and they're like, the ones that bum me out every once in a while is like, this is available at 7 a.m.
Like,
and they send you the email at 7:01.
Oh,
and then you go and it's gone.
Yeah,
that's when you're like, dude, what's happening? Why?
Yeah,
but like I way back in the day, I remember one year I went. I think this is like 2004. I went, and I was living in San Diego by then. And one year I went, and I had 2 badges. I had like a regular badge and I had an exhibitor badge, and so because of that, you could wait in line.
Yeah.
And I got so many exclusives, and what I did was, because I was able to do that, I was buying 2.
Right.
What's funny is almost all of that is gone. Like, I sold all of it at this point.
Wow.
Well, I told you before, I sold my collection and all that stuff.
Yes.
I actually do feel like, you and I talked before, I do feel like I will probably have some kind of collection purge in the next 2 years. Like, I feel like I will definitely do some kind of, because there's everything that's in this room, but there's also stuff that I have in storage, and it's like I will probably do some kind of trimming at some point in the next 2 years. But yeah, like, I've definitely waited in line for some stuff. I've definitely been like, this is something I want to get, and then it's funny because you do wait, and then you find out it wasn't as exclusive as you thought. In some cases,
that's the worst.
Like, it's everywhere later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been lucky that I've never waited in line and then had it sell out while I was in line.
Oh, I've never had that, and I pray it never happens to me.
Well, I hope. I can't speak and say either way. I would hope what the company does is every once in a while they do a mental check of inventory and then they walk the line.
Exactly.
That's usually like,
we only cap the line when we've run out of inventory.
That's they recognize it. But what was really interesting with this one at San Diego, I kept hearing about how people were buying a lot of stuff, and I would see people walk around with like bags and bags.
Me too. No, I saw a dude. who was crossing the street. It was 10 in the morning, and he had 6 bags. Like,
they're all Funko, right? They're all Funko.
They were. There were a couple of DC bags because DC had these really nice. They were exclusive, and he was like, I won Comic-Con. And he's just walking across the street, like going wherever the hell he was going. I'm like, it can't just start. People are getting here for the first time right now, and you're already going home.
Yeah, well, because once you get your mission,
you
know what I mean. Like, everyone has like their mission. I've had this before too, where it was like I've gone to cons and been like, I'm here for one thing,
right?
Whether it's a meeting or it's, I don't think I've ever gone to a convention for a thing, but I've gone to conventions where I'm like, I am here for one meeting. It's like the New York Comic Con that I went to in 2015. Like, that convention, I really only went because I was going to sit down and talk to Dan about the Flash. And I was going to pitch him what eventually became the Flash. That was it. I was like, that's my mission, and I literally left afterward. When we went to New York last year, I was really only there to announce Superman.
Yeah.
Like I got there. Oh, that's not totally true. We had a meeting. I had a couple of meetings with DC earlier in the week that were at like the Warner Brothers building. That was an important part of me being there.
Yes.
But then, literally, the moment we announced Superman, I left for the airport. Like I left it. I left the panel.
I remember that because I remember us talking about it, and you were like, "Dude, I'm leaving. Like I'm gone."
Yeah, I'm gone. I got on an airplane. I flew home, and I was home, like having dinner with my wife
like, that day.
That was funny about this year, San Diego. So I don't do conventions on Sunday. I just don't. Like I don't ever do conventions on Sunday anymore. Partially that's why I can get to work on Monday morning. You know, I can start the week fresh and but I was home, so I got home on Sunday, and people are still texting me.
Right, like on the floor, being like,
on the floor, like, hey, where are you? Like, or, you know, hey, do you have a minute to meet up? Or, hey, I'm over here. Do you mind meeting up with me over here? Whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm with my kids. Like, I am chilling in my house.
Yeah.
Way back in the day when I would, either when I was living in California or when I was coming back from California or whatever, I would do this thing where my buddy and I had this deal where he also worked for one of the publishers. And so he would be working, but he would always get to have Sunday off. And so he and I had this deal. It was like we wanted to be back in LA having In and Out before the con closed.
Nice.
Which meant leaving at a very certain time. And it was very much like this train is going to leave.
Right.
And so he and I would always leave, and we would do it every time. We'd be like in his apartment in LA eating In and Out, and then it'd be like 5 o'clock where we did it. One time, I remember we got to the In and Out, and we went into the In and Out, and we're waiting in line. This is in LA, and we're waiting in line, and this dude was in front of me in line, and he still had his badge on. And I tapped him, and I was like, dude, it's over. And the guy was like, oh, he was so embarrassed. But it's like, dude, I was like, listen, man, I feel it. I've gotten to the point where I've been in line to get on an airplane, like going through security and then realize I still have my badge on.
Oh, totally.
Like I've done that before, but yeah, the San Diego was really fun, dude. It was really good to see a lot of people, and I think one of the best parts of it is always just getting to see other, like, not just comic creators, and get to see my friends and to hang out and talk about comics and have meetings where you're talking about comic books, but to be able to see like readers, that's always the best part. Like do signings, run people on the street, and just start just talking about comics. And with this one, because it was really great. It felt very empowering, you know, because like I do a lot of books, and there are times where I do feel burnout and I do feel the weight of things on my shoulders sometimes, particularly with DC. And it's like, but then to be there and meet people who are just like, they love what we're doing. They're really happy about comic books. They talk about what, you know, they're like, I love Superman, I love Green Arrow. You know, they tell us other things they love about what DC's doing, and they just talk about comics in general. You know, we like talk about Marvel, Image, you know, create our own books, and just really feel that power of like everyone is having a good time in this moment. You know, and it is. I know it's Nerd Prom for 4 days,
totally,
but it's like everybody's riding high a little bit for that moment. But it's kind of nice to just to be around that for a few days of people just being like, we love comics, and then for someone like me who's been reading comics my entire life, like. I think there's a bit, you know, they always say this thing of like, would the kid version of you be happy with what you're doing, right?
Right.
I think the kid version of me would be fucking confused for one
big
thing.
Time.
Like, what is happening? But at the same time, I think they would be like, because I was seeing like this where it's like, and this is one of my mini name drops. I had lunch with Jim Lee one day, and originally it was funny. We had talked earlier, and it was like, oh, we're gonna have coffee. And I was like, cool, we'll get coffee, whatever. And then coffee turned into lunch, and we had like a really great conversation. But as we're sitting there, we were in a public place, so it's like we're not hidden away or anything. We're not even at a restaurant. We were like in a kind of public bar area at the actual bar, eating lunch at this actual bar. And people around would be like, holy shit, that's Jim Lee. And they'd come over and they would kind of take a picture, you know. And so Jim, of course, is very generous and nice, and of course he does, and he says a nice thing, you know. And but if I went back in time to like, this dates myself a little bit, so I hope Jim isn't watching this or never sees this. If I go back to like 5th grade,
right?
You know, like me as a little kid and being like, I love Wildcats, I loved X-Men, you know,
yeah.
Like Wildcats was was already had been out a little bit by this time. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, and just like talking to my friends about how awesome Jim Lee is, you know, and talking about just his art and variants and the characters and all the stuff, and just being like, I remember trading comics with my
Oh,
friends,
yeah.
or trading for initial Wildcats that I won the first printing of, for trading them with something else,
Nice.
and you know, and just really liking his work, and so then to be sitting there with him, just talking about comics and business and life, there is a level of surreal. It is like, I never thought this would happen,
Dude.
and you know, I have progressive moments like that, like, you know, I'm working on Superman, and I love working on Superman, and I've talked about this a bit, where I feel like it's one of the most intimidating projects I've ever worked on. But when I was a kid, you know, I remember waiting in line for Death of Superman, you know,
Yes.
waiting in line in the rain to get the Superman. And then one morning, this happens, I did this last year too, but like this year, one of the mornings in San Diego, I'm just sitting there having breakfast with Dan Jurgens and just
Right.
talking about Superman, you know?
Yeah.
And just talking about Superman, talking about comic books. He's telling me stories about Crisis and Zero Hour. And I told him, and I was like, you know, I really, Zero Hour was really the beginning of my like addiction, because already there was Nightfall and Death of Superman. Like that was when I was like, and I told him, I was like, I really mostly read, before that, you know, I was reading all the Superman books and all the Batman books. Like I was very much into those.
Yep.
And I would pick up a few things here and there. Like I was already in Legion of Superheroes before this.
Mm-hmm.
But then when Zero Hour happened, it was like, oh, now I'm reading every single comic book that they put out. Like
Exactly.
I am,
Oh, you're
you
getting
know,
all the Zero issues. You're getting like, yeah.
yeah. So it's like 12-year-old me just being like, I'm reading everything, you know, and I'm like explaining this to Dan. He's like 12 years old. Like,
He's like, I was a man, like
yeah, no, he was like,
writing
I
about
was
health
a full grown
insurance while I
adult
was
with
drawing that.
children.
You're talking about being a kid, and we're colleagues now. Like,
Yeah, and so we started talking about that, not about that piece, but just it's me sitting there talking to him about Superman, talking about DC, and then him, you know, and he actually had some really good advice, like he always does. Like Dan always has really great perspective and awesome advice.
yeah,
This time it was at a point where I was like, man, I wish I was recording you right now. Like that's how good it was.
yeah,
And it's just surreal, dude. Like that's the thing about this convention in particular, more so than any other. I think because I've gone to it so many times, right? Like New York, I didn't go the first year; I went the second year, and I've gone every year since, right?
same, yeah,
But with San Diego, the fact that I've been going since I was a teenager,
yeah.
it's like I've seen it every year. I've seen the evolution, and I remember waiting in line. Like I remember going in and waiting in line for this creator, and I remember this, or you know, it's like I have very clear memories of that city and that convention as my, you know, a crucial part of like my fandom and coming up in comics. And then
Yeah.
also like that was the first place that I had my own small press table and trying to sell my books. You know, it's like the first places I tried pitching, even when I was in small press and trying to pitch, waiting in line for autographs. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's still
exactly.
like the evolution of it. And so to now be looking at it, it's why it's still my favorite convention. It's the one that's the most personal to me, I think.
Yeah,
But I do have those surreal moments where it's like, oh man, and then it helps me remind me why I love all this stuff. You know,
yeah,
like being there and talking to these creators, and you know, it's just a fun time.
yeah.
It's just a really fun time, and it's intense, as you see a lot of people, a lot of stuff going on. But it was
It's
good.
true. It is intense. It's funny. For me, that convention represents like a very different. Like I have the exact same feeling about like the blossoming from like fan to non-fan to like professional of some kind. To some lesser degree with the New York Comic Con for me, because like I started going when it opened. I was like, oh my god, New York's getting a real like convention. Like, and when I say real, I mean like a high profile convention.
Yeah, big one.
I
Yeah,
could have been going to conventions that would have been way more awesome my entire life, like especially when Marvel and DC were in Manhattan. I'm like, oh, I used to go to Brooklyn to visit my grandma every Sunday for like a good 15-year span. You mean to tell me that there are a couple of those Sundays where I could have gone and saw and literally met Jack Kirby?
oh
Like
man,
that kills me. I sent my like then 75-year-old grandma to one of those conventions. She's like, I hear they're having a comic book show. You read those comic books. And I sent her with like a grocery list of Spawn comic books. You know what I mean? Like that's
yeah.
and,
Oh,
and
dude, yeah.
she
That's funny you
got
said
there.
Spawn. I remember one year for Christmas, my my family asked me what I wanted, and I gave them a list of comic books, and Spawn was a major piece of that. Anyway,
Of course it was. But she got me those Spawn books, and I can imagine that she probably got a pretty good deal because she was like a 70-something-year-old, like small Italian woman with like a pull cart, and she's like, my boy wants to get the Spawn. You know, they're like, oh my god, this poor woman. All right, well, I'm not going to charge you like $25 for the Spawn.
yeah,
Like,
let's help this lady
help
out.
this
Yeah,
lady out, which actually really worked out for me because, like, you know, and I got like garbage. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, well, I need this issue of Shadowcat because Spawn appears in it. You know, Shadowhawk.
I didn't even.
But
Yeah, I was like, when did that happen?
yeah,
But then
no,
I think about it. But you meant Shadowhawk. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I was getting all those Image books. I mean,
yeah,
I was like, I remember when I was in. I will touch really quick when I was a kid, when all the partners left Marvel, I was mad, and I was like that kid. I was the one that was like, they betrayers,
yeah,
traitors, like.
creators.
And then when Image started, I was like, ugh, whatever. And
Yeah.
then I remember when my brother actually he bought an issue of Youngblood, and I had my stack of comics, and he could buy one comic, and he bought an issue of Youngblood, which actually says a lot about like the power of those things too. Where it's like my
Yeah.
brother, who was younger than me, was like, I can get one comic, and he bought Youngblood.
Yeah.
And I remember because all my friends knew this, they knew I was like a Marvel and DC guy, and I was so like anti-Image in the very beginning.
Totally.
So I missed that very first wave of books when they first started coming out, you know, and they were obviously they came out kind of scattered, but my brother bought it, and I remember reading it in the car on the way home and being like, I really like this.
This is awesome.
Like, I really
Yeah.
like this. More of this. And then, so you fast forward, like, yeah, I think I was in like 5th grade. I remember one of my friends was like, you know, it's really funny. A few months ago, you were so anti-Image, and now you're sitting here talking about Newman and how much
Right.
you like the Newman comic book. I'm like, well, this guy's name's Todd Knock. He's awesome. He's drawing it, and like Jeff Masseter had worked on it, and then you know, it's actually how I started. And also, Eric Stevenson wrote that book too, but it was like, that's how I first learned about Todd Knock, and obviously Todd Knock, you know, Justice, and,
Of course,
you know,
yeah.
But yeah, like that was my little window of like, ugh. But then I read it. And I love this stuff. Anyway.
Oh, totally. No, yeah, I was, yeah. It's funny. I did not gravitate towards Wildstorm until later. It was Spawn for me and the Max. Those are my two like Image
You told me that
characters.
before. Yeah, the Max was on. I didn't get into the Max until the cartoon came on.
Cartoon is, and I've said this before, and I know it's blasphemous for a lot of like Sam Keith fans because I think Sam Keith is an incredibly prolific creator and he's an awesome powerhouse. But the best version of the Max is that cartoon, and it's just because it's the most powerful issues, and it's like distilled into this like beautiful marriage of comics and like visual medium. Like the voice cast is just flawless. There's like people in that show who have never done anything else. You know, you're just like, I don't know who that voice is, and I've never heard it ever again. But it also ends the book. Like that cartoon ends.
Yeah,
and it is not like a reinterpretation of a version of one of the issues. Like it's just straight up like, here's a new ending to the Max, and it's a little better.
That's funny. That is such a rarity to have something like that, to have something that's a boiled down version of something. But
yeah,
you know, I'm glad that exists. But that is how I got into it. Like was through that, and then what else was there? Yeah, I was really into Savage Dragon, and then I was really into Spawn. Like Spawn was it, and then I got all the extreme stuff. I mean,
yes,
I was definitely a kid. Then you're talking about me working at a comic store, and then I'm reading everything. So it's like a whole other. At that point, and I feel like this is when I worked at the comic store in college. You know, it was a fairly large comic store, so there was like one dude that was like all Marvel. All he cared about was Marvel. That was it. He didn't care about anything else. Fantastic Four was his favorite thing. He bought that every month, and he read a lot of Marvel stuff, but he knew nothing about outside of Marvel.
Right.
One guy who was like hardcore DC. He only knew DC. There's another guy who was very indie. Like he was reading manga stuff before manga. Like when Tokyo Pop first
he was
started,
written like Dirty Pair and stuff. Like
yeah, he was already into it, but he was very much like his favorite comic of all time was Invisibles, and he was very much like a Grant Morrison.
Oh yeah.
Right, and he was reading stuff that was like, you know, the Alan Moore stuff, but was like, I don't want to read Watchmen, but was reading other Alan Moore stuff, right? Like when Lost Girls came out, like he was the one that was like, that's mine, right? Like,
okay.
And then there was me, and I was just like Marvel, DC, Image, just like hardcore. But then also you sprinkle in like Dark Horse, Star Wars, and Hellboy. You know, I didn't start reading Hellboy until I was in college. But then you start like I have blind spots. Like I don't know anything about Valiant. Like Valiant is like a complete and utter blind spot for me. And I know people love it, complete blind spot. I was also very into cross-gen. So it's like quite a lot of cross-gen stuff. A lot
You
of
know who else
thoughts
is a
about
really
cross
big
gen.
fan of cross-gen, or at least he like Dan Slott.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
I'll have to ping him and be like, "You want
you
to talk
should
about
ping
cross
him
gen?"
because when he met my wife and I were hitting a con and we chatted with Dan Slott back in like 2007 at Baltimore Comic Con.
Oh,
He's sitting next. There's actually very early videos when we weren't sure what we were doing. We were shooting like little videos on the floor. 2007, Dan Slott next to Tom Brevoort. So New Ways to Die is happening, and we're interviewing Dan Slott about Spider-Man, and then we're like, he's like, man, I hope I get to write Spider-Man like full time one day. It's gonna be really cool, like all this stuff. And like, we were like, is there, we're throwing out these questions like, what's something they wouldn't let you do that you really wanted to do? And he's like, I really wanted to make Matt Gargan Scorpion again. Like that was really important to me to like make him Scorpion. So he's like, we got to do like kind of like an homage to that, but I wanted to get him out of the Venom suit and move on. But it was funny because actually, if you watch the video, like it cuts because he has to ask Tom what is an okay answer to give. But one of the things he recommended was Rune. He was like, oh man, Rune, such a great like magic series from CrossGen.
Rune is you're talking about Rune? That's from that's Ultraverse.
You're thinking? Oh, I am thinking of Rune. I'm thinking it. No, it's definitely CrossGen. Is it Ruse? It's Ruse. I'm sorry.
Ruse.
Yeah, I merged my.
Rune is, I was like, oh man, this conversation just went sideways. No,
I did. I merged my two Marvel acquired indie properties.
There are some people that are watching this right now that are like, they have zero idea.
They're like, what the crap are you talking about?
They're like all this stuff. They're like, what is this?
If you're not watching the show while also having a tab open for Wikipedia to be able to Google or look up any of these books, like
somebody one time we were talking about this because as you are aware, there are a lot of experts on the internet.
Yes, I've met quite a few of them. Yeah,
so many experts on the internet. And a friend of mine was saying this to me one time. He saw this post where somebody was a DC fan, and they were calling themselves an expert, and they were like, "I am an expert on DC Comics because I have been reading for 10 years." and I know, right? But here's the funny thing, and I was like, listen, that's totally fair, right?
Yeah.
Like I was
10 years is pretty,
when I was a kid, especially in college, I was crazy cocky. I thought I knew everything. I literally on the job application to work at a comic book store, I wrote, "Ask me anything about comics, I know everything." I literally wrote that down. Like, not even a joke. I literally wrote, "Ask me anything about comics, I know everything."
That's what we're like, man.
Which I do not know everything about comics. I have a lot of blind spots. Like the older I've gotten, the more I've blind spots. But my friend, it was Culver. Culver was one that said this. He was like, "What's really funny about this is if somebody says they've been reading, they're an expert because they've been reading for 10 years. There's no problem with that. However, there's one part of this. That means that New 52 is older than 10 years, and they've been reading post 52.
Right.
When he said this, I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, that's wild. But what's funny is that now, because of the internet, because you have like Marvel Unlimited, you have DC like Infinite, you can then read all of it.
All of it.
You could spend a summer and just be like, you could become an expert. You could become like a studied 100% expert on comics by reading all of it.
More so than us, where it's like we had gaps in our peer. Like, there's college. I didn't buy comics. You know what I mean? Like high school to college, I didn't buy comics. So like, there's a big old chunk, and I had to go back and find
like
stuff.
That. Like New 52. New 52 was a blind spot for me for a while because even though I worked on it, like I didn't really read comics. Or I should say, no, I read a lot of Marvel. I read a lot of Image. But there was a moment where I wasn't reading DC for like maybe 3 years, and maybe 2-3 years. So I would read Batman. I read Flash, but I wasn't reading everything. I kind of knew what was going on, and then so when I started coming back into work, I had to go back and read it all. But dude, that was a major blind spot for me.
Totally.
I've had little windows like that. One thing that's funny about the Infinite Unlimited thing that I think is actually like kind of creating a weird thing in comics right now is that like a major part of the readership, and this is true of us as well, right? Like so, Watchmen. I didn't read Watchmen until it was collected.
Right.
I didn't read Crisis until it was collected.
Same.
Right. So I got to read it all in one big sitting. And that's true of a lot of things, right? There's a lot of stuff that's before our time that we got to read these chunks. It is even more so true now. And even then where it was like, let's say I wanted to read let's say Craven's Last Hunt.
Yeah.
Craven's Last Hunt was collected, but let's say I wanted to read Craven's Last Hunt. I had to go find it. I had to go dig through the bins and find it.
Yep.
if you're a reader now, you can just go to Unlimited. Like there are a lot of resources. You can buy collections, there's trades, there's hardcovers.
Yeah, which version you want? Like, no,
which version do you want? There's a lot, right? And that's true of almost every comic.
Yep.
And what's fascinating about that is I think it's created a really interesting dynamic in comics now, where the readership, it's interesting. So it's like they judge things in weird ways sometimes, because it's like you have this moment where when, let's say you do that, like you read these bricks of comics, like you read these long runs and you read these books, and you're getting to read it as a whole almost. You get to read it all in one sitting. You get to binge it and get your fix. You like,
totally,
you know, I'm going to read every issue of Ultimate Spider-Man in a week.
Yeah.
And you could do that. You could do that. Whereas then when somebody who was really into Ultimate Spider-Man, they had to read that over like 10 years. Exactly. They had to wait every month to read it. And it's different when it's basically what the equivalent of looking at a complete puzzle and seeing the big picture versus being handed one puzzle piece at a time.
Exactly.
And it's interesting to see how you can tell there is a certain level of impatience. But this has also been created by Netflix with binging. It's why I actually really like that a lot of networks are leaning away from binging. Yeah, I think that's actually better for things to do that.
Keeps it alive.
Even if it's once a week.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a better way to give that information to the audience versus like, here's all of it at once. And actually, we've seen this where it's like, I actually prefer watching movies and TV shows lately.
Yeah.
And the number one reason why is very simple. If that show gets canceled.
Right.
Like, you invest your time, and it's rough when it's like, you know that Netflix might put something up and then it's like, it didn't get watched millions of times the weekend it aired, which means on Monday it's canceled, like that. And this is not always the case. We know this. Like, there's all over the place. But the fact that it has happened, where shows don't get to find an audience, and it's part of the same problem that comics have, where it's harder. Like, I even recognize the difference between Flash versus Superman, where it's on Flash. Like, I feel like there was a different level of patience. Also, it was double ship as well, other thing. Whereas in Superman, I do feel a different level of immediacy to it, where it's like the audience wants everything now. Versus on Flash, I felt like, oh, I could do this over 6 months. I could tell this over a year. You know, Hush was over a year. And also you start to think about things like we talked about Watchmen, where it's like Watchmen was late.
Right.
Like, and so it's just interesting. Something I've observed a lot and I've thought about a lot. That's probably a video for another day. We have a whole conversation about that. One thing I did want to say about San Diego that was really fun, and then we could talk about Superman a little bit and some of the stuff we announced. I did get to go by the Hasbro booth and look at G.I. Joe toys. Like, I mean, it was like G.I. Joe toys. And I got there, and they had a bunch of stuff I hadn't seen before. They had the Hiss tank, which was awesome to see in person. They had the Dragonfly in person. It was awesome. But I got to meet one of the guys that actually works on the toys and talk to him for a while. And then I got to say, like, hey, I'm actually writing the comics. Like, this is what I'm working on. And he was really awesome to talk to. So that was like one of the highlights, was just like getting to talk about G.I. Joe, but from a fan level, right? Like, with somebody working on the G.I. Joe toys that obviously in my office, I have a crap ton of them, but we actually got to have this like really nice conversation. That was one of the highlights. It's always a reminder of like, again, like, oh, like you can have these moments of just like cool stuff at these conventions. So it was really fun getting there to talk with him about that. Was there anything for you that you were like surprised by at San Diego, that you were like, oh, this happened and you did not see that coming and you got to do something cool?
Yeah, there was, I mean, like, there's so much of it is about like the experiences. It's about like having those moments and just like stacking them up at the end of the weekend and being like, wow, that like whole thing happened. One of them is like, as a child of like the like 80s and 90s, I and being comics, there's a book, there's my sister and I are very different in many ways, but one of the things that she loved that I found because of her from comics was Bone from Jeff Smith.
Oh yeah, dude.
And I found it late, but like, I was obviously
me too. I didn't get it until it was that gigantic compendium.
See, I didn't get the compendium. I got there before they went to right before they went to Image for like a few minutes, and then went right back to cartoon books. I think it was just Jeff Smith's like, I can't afford.
So you're still there before me. Yeah, you're there before me.
Yeah. I was like reading the crap out of it, and I was just loving it. And Wizard Magazine was telling me like, you should be liking Bone, and I'm like, oh, okay, thanks guys. But inevitably, I did get the compendium because I never got to finish it. It was just like, after a while, I got out and Bone kept going, and I was like, I never found out how it ended. finally read the Cold Compendium, and I've been not chasing like literally, but like I've been hoping to run into Jeff Smith at some point at some convention. And last San Diego Comic-Con, he had like a table, and I stood in the line for him. It was probably like 8 people in the line. I stood there for 45 minutes, and it didn't
He's
move.
friendly and he talks to people. Yeah.
Right, and I didn't even know if he was there or not. Like it was like a line that it, like snaked into someone else's booth.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't even know if he was there, but I was like, you know what? I have to leave. Like I can't stand here for another 45 minutes without it moving. So I just left. I was like, one day, and that was this year, where he had a booth and there was nobody there, and not like, and it was actually a bit funny because he had a booth. There was one guy who was there when he wasn't there, and he's like, I don't know when he's coming. Like I hope he comes soon. And then I was like, well, good luck. And then one of the days I came by, and he had stacks of solicits, like not even like there were sheets that just promoted his college comic of Bone called Thorn into a collection.
Yeah.
So I went up to him and I said hello, and I finally got to meet him, and he drew me a Smiley Bone.
Oh my god, dude. That is awesome. Yeah, that is an awesome story. I love that. That is so cool. Yes,
just
dude.
Getting him to draw it in front of me and stuff.
Hell yes, dude. Cool. That is great.
And I didn't even ask, one of the things I didn't even ask him for. I was just like, he was just like, well, thanks a lot, man. Here. And I'm like, hell yeah. That's awesome.
Dude. All right. Yes. I love all of that because that is just like that's what you want to hear. Like
that's right?
I really love stuff like that. I don't that's what I was saying before. Like, I think next year what I'm going to do is I'm going to like try to block out 3 hours, just wander around and look at stuff. Yeah. There people like I really wanted to meet Zoe Thurgood.
Yes, she was there. She was, yeah.
I know. I really wanted to meet her and just like I love your work. I really appreciate it. It's amazing work. Yeah. And I wanted to buy something from her and stuff. I didn't get to meet her while we were there. But there are a lot of creators that I wanted to meet. It's funny. Like when I was a kid, I told you before, like way back in 1998, I got to meet Joe Quesada, and then I met him, but he signed a book for me, right? Like way back when. And then I met Joe Quesada another time, I think probably in like 2001.
Ooh.
2001 I met him. Joe Quesada is one of my favorite like comic artists ever. Like I have art of his, and he's one of the people I would buy everything they do, and I appreciate the stuff that he's done for Marvel. I have never met him since 2001. We have never run into each other ever.
Wow!
Like I've never
22 years. You haven't seen him again.
I haven't seen him in person.
You know what you got to do, man? You got to go to Baltimore.
Well, no, he's at conventions I'm at half the time.
I know that's true.
Well, part of it is this, and this is a piece of it, is that like there are very few people. It's hard how to explain this without making it. Because somebody else told me this because I was like, well, I've actually been kind of near him, right? Like I'm obviously in a position I could probably go to somebody like, hey, I'd like to meet Joe Quesada. Like I could probably do that. Like I could probably go to a convention and talk to somebody, one of his art dealers, or somebody, and be like, next time he's here, I just want to come up and say hi to him. I'm not going to wait. I don't need to do anything. I'm not asking for a sketch or anything. I just want to say hi to him.
Totally.
And say like, hey, I like your work, and thank you and stuff like that. And they're like, you could probably do that, right? Like you could probably just ask somebody and they would figure it out. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't do it. It's so
I don't want to
weird.
make a big deal. Yeah.
That's what it was. But I want to show you something. Hold on. Let me get this real quick. See if I can find it real fast in my office.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So when I was young, I would go to conventions. I would start talking to artists. You go to Artist Alley and you're like, hey, I like your work or whatever, and buy a book from whatever, and people are very nice. A lot of creators are really nice. And the amount of creators who I would just say, come by and say, hey, I like your work, and then they would draw me something is massive. Like, and the thing is, at the time, because I was never the kind of person that like went to get sketches. I just wasn't that person. But because I wasn't that person, I never had a sketchbook with me.
Mm-hmm.
So this used to happen all the time, where I would get backboards. I would have like my comic. I'd have them sign the comic, whatever, right? And then we would start talking, and this is like over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
they would be like, well, let me draw you something. Let me just draw you something. And I'd be like, okay, but I don't have any paper. And they would always draw it inside the backboard.
Right.
Like always. So I have this like J. Scott Campbell drawing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Was on the back of a Wildstorm poster, where he was just like, yeah, I'll draw that for you,
Yeah.
This is a Superman drawing by Stuart Monin from 2000, and he was just like, let me just draw this for you. I have a John Cassaday Batman in here.
Oh no.
This is a Travis Charest robot that he drew for me one time. Nobody was at his table, and I was just like, your work is amazing, and he was like, let me draw something for you. It was always so weird. Like, this would never happen now. Like, that's why, well, actually, no. That's why I was like, this would never happen now. Nobody would ever do this. And then you're like, no, let me show you something.
No, he did it.
What else do I have in here, dude? I have so many. They might all be over there, but I have a lot of really cool stuff that's like that, where I was just like, talking to a creator, and they were like, oh, thank you, let me just draw something for really quickly. But yeah, I have like stacks of stuff over here. Like, I have a Tim Sale. This is a Tim Sale Batman.
Nice.
A lot of Todd Knox in here.
That's awesome.
What's some other ones I have? I have a lot of like really cool, obviously like a Savage Dragon by Eric Larson.
Eric Larson, of course.
But that's nice to know that still happens.
Yeah,
that still
it
happens.
does.
This is one I did not know who this person was. I was waiting in line for Jim Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy who was sitting next to the table, and he was waiting to talk to Jim Lee. He wasn't there for a signing. He was waiting to talk to Jim Lee.
Gotcha.
And we just started talking. And then he was like, well, I'll draw you this thing. He's like, what would you want me to draw? I was like, Batman. And so Lee Brahimo drew me a Batman.
Oh, that's awesome.
This is like early.
Like Deathblow Batman. Yeah.
Yeah, like very early stuff for him.
That's awesome.
It's just like, I have a Frank Whiteley, 2 Frank Whiteley drawings in here. Yeah, because I would just be like I have 2 Frank Whiteley drawings. One he did of Bruce Wayne. Another one he did of Owlman. But yeah, like that's part of the thing I think that is, like you were saying, it's like the fact that you were able to meet Jeff Smith and just have an actual like
human
nice
interaction
moment.
with him. It was just a
nice
human
interaction.
Yeah.
That's I think that stuff is really, it's awesome when that kind of stuff happens. And it's like, that's the stuff that like my favorite stories. It's like, I ran into this person, this cool thing happens, or I ran into this creator I love, and, which I have a ton. This like whole thing is full of those. I was like, I should probably frame some of this.
Definitely.
Yeah, but frames are expensive, as I know you know.
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
frames will surprise you when you're like, how much is it? Like,
why is this so expensive? Especially custom frame. You got to get them like just nowadays. I'm just like, make sure it's on 8.5 by 11 or something like that.
Dude, I have had a couple of custom framing things, and I definitely was like, there are a few pieces that had custom framing done. Yeah. For the most part, I will just buy a frame.
Yeah,
it's gonna fit. We're good.
When we got the studio, I was like, I am gonna get this poster, and because I'm sure they make frames this big. They made a poster. The Milestone DC Worlds Collide.
Worlds Collide, dude. Yes.
Where it's the size of a small car. And I went to the local framings at Michael's, and they were like, yeah, A, we don't make that frame. B, let me see how much I could draw it up, blah, 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 blah. After discounts, it would have cost me $400. And I was like, this poster cost me $1. Dude. Like, never in my life will this poster ever be seen by human eyes. Like,
dude,
that's just the end of it.
Yeah, that was the stuff. Like, I have a framed piece. Where is that? Somewhere I haven't started putting the frame stuff up yet in here.
Yeah,
it's funny. This happens to me every summer. I'm like, I'll do it this summer, and then it's like the summer just keeps creeping away. You're just like, okay, now we're getting into August now, and I'm like, someday in August, and it's like, no. I need like a whole month. It was fun. I was talking to somebody else about this. Where I'm like, I need a month off, and they were like, oh, so you can like rest, and I'm like, no, so I can do stuff.
I can finally get things done.
I can do something, and then I was like, because I have comic books to write, so I need a month off from these comic books, so I can write these comic books, and then I need another month off so that I can frame things and put them up on the walls in my office.
Yeah.
Like, I have a lot to do all the time, as I know you
Yeah.
know. The only thing
Oh.
we announced. Well, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna. It was a segue, but
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you know, apropos of your work and the books that are coming out right now that you're working on, and the fact that like Night Terrors was this big ass thing that kind of like came
Mhm.
out like a dark horse, and people were like iffy, let's say, online about
Sure.
it. But I'm thrilled to say, you know, when it initially was launched, people were like, "Great, I get 2 months off comics. Thanks a lot." Like that was the prevailing smart alecky response that I saw 100 times in response to
Oh,
Night
sure.
Terrors.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool, get cool.
Even though we
Thanks for.
kept telling people it's gonna be important for the books after,
Oh,
but sure.
I know. And then like the first issue, they were like, Lazarus Planet. This is why, and people were like, "Wait, Lazarus Planet mattered?" Shit. But it's
This is gonna
great
happen
because
again. There's gonna be a bunch of stuff that's gonna happen in the fall, and people are gonna be like, "Wait, when did this happen?"
you know what night
Like,
what?
oh, you
Why
mean
is
I need to
Deadman
read
so
that?
important?
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean there's a new bad guy that's like doing a bunch of bad stuff in the winter? Where'd that bad guy come from?
What? Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
But right now,
people are gonna read Batman in September and be like, "What are they talking about?"
what? Well, that's great because by then they can probably get the hardcover.
No, well, we had you know, and and it's selling well, and it's one of those
But
things.
it's people are digging it. Like that's my point wasn't to rag on it. My point was that the prevailing opinion is now the books are out and people are reading them, which is the thing we tell everybody every time.
Yeah,
You know,
read the books. Yeah.
read the book, see if and people are like, everyone has a favorite. No one's
Oh
like
yeah,
ragging on it. You know, they're like, this is cool. Or people are saying like, oh, it turns out it's cool. And people who did take the 2 months off are like, wait, what? It's cool? Am I
yeah,
missing
and we've
something?
been
And I'm like,
I signed so many during San Diego.
yeah,
Like it was Superman #1, Green #1, and then Night Terrors. Those are the three I signed the
that's
most of. And then
awesome.
like Nail Biters in there too. Like that always will
Oh,
forever be.
sure. What are the
But
rogues? Are people bringing rogues?
no, no, you
Oh,
know this that like every dude, every convention, I get like one person that brings me rogues, and I thank that person. Like I'm
well,
like, thank you
I
for reading this book, and they're like, I loved it, and I'm like, no one read this, so thank
yeah,
you. Like,
dude. I got
thank
the
you for
hardcover. I one of these days, if you go to New York, I'm gonna find you and make sure you sign it. But
no New York. We're gonna figure something out in New York.
I know
You and I are gonna figure something out in New York. We're gonna walk the floor. We're gonna figure something out. But
it'll be
yeah,
great.
I would
Yeah.
totally.
Oh yeah.
No, that Rogues is a book that was really special to me. But the challenge about Rogues, and I just wrote about this in my Substack,
Oh
in
great.
my newsletter. People should subscribe to my newsletter, especially because whatever is happening with the internet, with Twitter and social media, where
Where the hell
I
else
went
are
from
we gonna
using
go? Yeah.
one to now I have like five.
Oh my god. Yeah.
I'm like,
Well,
doesn't mean I have to pay my assistant 5 times more.
no. That's just part of the deal, man. Like it's just if they
No,
gotta
but
make an Instagram post, yeah.
it was really hard because Rogues #1 came out the exact same day as Justice League 75, The Death of the Justice League. They came out the exact same.
Yeah.
And so it was so hard for me to try to sell Rogues at that time. And then the last issue of Rogues, I think, came out when we were like deep in the Dark Crisis. You know, it was like November, I think. Might have been October.
Yeah.
And it was like, dude, it was a bummer. And I really love that book a lot. Like I'm really proud of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really proud of it. Like it's something
To me, it's
I
great.
look at and I say this was a very much a me book at DC.
Yes.
It's weird. Like my relationship with DC sometimes stuff is interesting, and this might be a whole other thing to talk about someday.
Mhm.
But it's like I do all these like blockbuster events. Like I do all these blockbuster events, and I do them for many different reasons. And because I do enjoy that part. I do enjoy the doing these big blockbuster events. They're really challenging. That's part.
Sure.
They are a completely different beast, completely different challenge. But the thing I'm always more passionate about are smaller things. And so it's like always this kind of balance between these two. And it was like that year doing, here is his Dark Crisis, and then it was a smaller, more intimate story with the Rogues. And
Yeah.
then this year it was like, okay, we're doing Night Terrors, and it was only 2 months long, so it was a little different. But then you read I'm doing Green Arrow and Superman and Batman and Robin, which are still bigger stories, but they're a
More
little more
character based.
character based. It's a different dynamic. I think about this a lot. We were talking about Spielberg, and it's like Spielberg somehow, not somehow, he just figured out that balance better than I think almost anybody, particularly in the '80s. he was
Yeah.
able to figure out that balance. And
Well, he just knows, it's like he knows that like it's
yeah,
about it. We were just watching. My wife is like way into movies and with filmmaking in general, and we were just
yeah.
there's this great channel that I'm trying to remember the name of, but they made this video about like the 3 act structure, and
Yeah.
they're using Jurassic Park as the example because they're like Spielberg, like no one gets eaten by a dinosaur for like when you first show up, like we got the hook where it's like the raptor cage scene that like everyone forgets about like that amazing
Oh,
cold open where it's like this
the cold
shooter.
open. Yeah, no, it opens
Yeah,
and they give you what you want right at the beginning, but they don't really.
that's right.
Like
That's right. You don't
they're
see
like,
it.
there's a dinosaur here and he eats somebody, but you actually don't see it, but you know, and it
Yeah,
builds
how horrible it is.
anticipation. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you
and
kind of
then you
forget that
got
dinosaurs are
like
dangerous. You forget that dinosaurs are dangerous.
yeah, they're beautiful and they're wonderful and you want to
Yes.
see them and like and you're building character for like a
Yeah.
third of the movie. Like for 75% of the movie, you're watching these people and you're just love it. You're falling in love with them, and Spielberg's making you love them so that you fear for them for the last like third of the flick. It's
Yeah.
like that's exactly like that is like such a like and it comes across as just like flawless. And when it's done well, it's like there's no work done at all. Like it's like you
Yeah.
don't see the strings.
There's a video where Steven Soderbergh took Raiders
Yeah.
and he made it into a black and white movie, but then he also took out all the dialogue and the score and he put a different score in.
Oh.
And there's a video on YouTube he talks about this. I'll have to send it to you, but they
Yeah.
literally just talk about his visual storytelling and blocking, right? Like
Yeah.
how he moves the actors, how he moves the camera, the storytelling he does, and it really makes you just like, man, this dude, like the thoughtfulness of the work he puts together, and it really makes me, whenever I'm working on something, I like you have to slow down.
Yep.
And that's always the challenge with these books is slowing down. Like I was working on Superman, so I'm gonna bring it back around to Superman. I was working on Superman this week, and I had to finish a script this week. I actually finished it I turned it in like 15 minutes before you and I started
Oh,
talking.
nice.
But I was working on an issue with Superman, and it's like part of it is like big explosions. It's Superman, big epic fighting, but it's always like trying to find the human moments with him and the human moments
Exactly.
with family. And then one of my favorite scenes, I should have seen. This is a bit of a spoiler, but we can talk about it because it's for 850. Like it's stuff with stuff we're doing in the fall.
Totally.
So yeah, at San Diego, we announced that Superman 7 is actually going to be Superman 850, which we knew from the very beginning. It's funny, people were like, "Did you guys know this?" And I'm like, "Come on, it's me." Like, do you think I didn't figure this out? Like the moment we started working on the book, I wasn't like, "Wait, when's the anniversary issue?" We all do this too. All the creators do it.
Yeah.
I remember one time I went to this panel and it was Stephen Wacker and it was like how to work with editors panel, I guess what it was called. And one of the points he made that really was funny to me was he was like, editors have the handbook too. Like we have the guidebook too. And he was like, we are well aware of all those characters that don't have books.
Right.
He's like, so you come to us and you're just like, here's this D-League character you probably never heard of. They have heard of it. Like, you know what I mean? Or anyone that's worthy of having a book is like they're aware of it. Like the things you think that they may not know, they probably know, and there's probably a whole complicated backstory behind it. I promise you, people at DC and Marvel, they're well aware of the legacy numbering. They're well aware.
Yeah, they have it. Yeah, they have like
they know. They know when the stuff is coming. They think about it. Like, oh, you mean there's an issue 900 coming? Yeah, they know. Like they're well aware. Anyway, so. Yeah. Working on the issue, and yes, we announced that at San Diego, and so I've been working on that and stuff after that, and some of the stuff for 24, and it always comes back around to this, dude. It's like, it's you can have the big spectacle and you can have the big set pieces, but what are the human moments? And there's a scene where it's like Lex and Lois are talking, and they haven't talked in the book yet. We haven't had a scene with them in a while.
True. Yeah.
And so it's the two of them, and it's a tense conversation between them. But it was moments like that where it's like just kind of making it grounded for a moment. It's like other stuff's going on, but it's just a moment between the two of them, and Soderbergh always does so well, and it's like his visual storytelling and I think with this a lot when I'm working on Superman particularly, where it's like I think with Superman sometimes people can fall into making stories about his powers or making stories. Big gigantic explosions, and it's just like all intense all the time. And some writers are really, really strong at that, and they can actually use that as a vehicle to tell other kinds of emotional storytelling, and it's awesome. And so for me, I'm always just trying to find those moments between those characters where it's like, I was talking about this with somebody at San Diego, where they wanted to. They were going to ask me a question. I knew this. It was like, it's a question we always get, like, why do you love Superman? How do you love Superman? And I was like, the answer to that, at least for me, is like read the book, because it's like I don't want to talk about, because they're not independent of each other at this point, right? Because I'm writing the book, I'm not going to be like, because every conversation about why I love Superman is going to come back to the book. So let's make it one question. Let's just talk about the book, and then we can talk about those pieces that I love about the character.
Totally.
And so the stuff we're doing in the book in the fall, and we have a lot of really big plans for the character leading out of the storyline. We're introducing a new villain called the Chain, and they're getting introduced in issue 6. And that the stuff with them is going to have like major impacts on the book and major impacts on like Superman as a whole. And then 850 is like a lot happens in that issue. Like a lot happens. When I was looking at it this morning, and I was like, man, so much actually happens in this one issue. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and not just with Superman. It's like stuff happening to people around Superman, right? There's a lot of like, we've been doing in the book where it's like we've been kind of like having everybody take the next step, right? It's like Lois becoming editor-in-chief.
Yeah.
It's like Jimmy having like a stable relationship.
Yeah.
It's like everyone is kind of doing that next thing, and that's what happens in a lot of this, where it's like things are happening to characters that are organic, and I think makes sense, but it all feels like the next step. We're not doing anything. I hesitate to say this. We're not doing anything nuts, but what I mean by that is nothing that doesn't feel like, oh, that makes sense. Like everything is like, oh yeah, why wouldn't that happen? Yeah, okay, that is the next step of this. That does make sense.
Yeah.
Nothing that I feel like would upset anybody, but it's like stuff that you might, go, oh yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
Or like not have expected to like, I didn't think we'd ever get here.
Yeah, no, it's things that you might say, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Why isn't that person doing that, right? Like, oh, that is the next step for them. That is the next thing for them to be doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there, and it's just been really fun to put that together. But yeah, I'm always trying to find those human moments with Clark and people around him, and I think, again, Spielberg does that so well, where it's like, everything is these human moments. This is very human moments, and then a giant shark attacks.
Exactly. And then you care that the shark attacks. You hope he doesn't. Yeah. It's why I was always, I've always been like, man, when Spielberg was rumored to be on the Blackhawks movie, I was like, wouldn't he be a good Superman director? I think James Gunn's going to do a fantastic job.
Yeah,
but it's like, and I, it's funny, this is this is kind of a tangent, but like I talked about it recently. You always hear when you pitch a big idea, like Spielberg doing a Superman movie. They're like, well, that's too big. Like, why would Spielberg do that? You know what I mean? And I'm like, and it's like, when, if not then when, right? Like, why wouldn't you like pick the biggest target for that?
Yeah, well, with him, I think it's always about what it's something we always have. Like, I feel the same way, where it's like you have to feel obsessed with it. You have to feel,
and I don't think he is like
because story with
never
that.
Come
like
up.
It's never come up. It's never come up. Like, I think if anything, he could have done some kind of pulpy thing. Like I could have seen him take on a pulper property and go with it. But here's actually the thing with this is that you look at him and it's like, okay, this dude clearly loved pulp stories, and you can see it. You can see he liked Don Quartermain. And you can see he liked Uncle Scrooge because of Indiana Jones.
Right.
So and Indiana Jones was because he could do James Bond.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like he made his version of the thing that he loved. And so I don't know. I'm not going to call Indiana Jones a superhero, but I do feel like that kind of thing for him exists. Like he made it, right? And it's like I would be curious, but also you look at James Gunn, and you and I both really like the Guardians movies, and it's like, remember the very first Guardians movie? It opens with Peter and his mom, and it's a very human thing, and it's like,
oh yeah,
if he's done such a good job with that arc of Peter and the Peter going home and the stuff with Rocket, and each movie has that focal point, and it's like. He's able to do a very similar thing.
Exactly.
The same thing with like, dude, that first Black Panther movie.
Yeah.
I've been watching that movie, and that whole opening sequence with like basketball and stuff, and it was very grounded. I was like, dude, I am here. I was like, it's funny. I actually think about this a lot, where I'm like, you have to, and it's funny you were saying about Jurassic Park. You have to open with something human, something relatable.
Right.
You have to relate with something. You have to open with something that people can relate to. And it's one of the reasons why high school movies are so popular, or high school movies and TV shows, right? Like high school TV shows are incredibly popular, and they will be popular forever.
Yep.
Do you know why? Do you know why?
I could probably name a few reasons, but
There's a
I'll
bunch,
just
but there's one particular reason. There's one particular reason.
Oh no, I don't know.
It is the last thing we all have in common. Like, think about that. We all went through it.
Yeah.
Most people went through some variation of it, right? Not high school, but some kind of school as a teenager. Whatever country you live in, you probably more than likely went through some variation of that experience.
Big time.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
It's a common shared experience. It's why like there are so many mangas and anime about like the that are set in schools.
Yeah, and a lot of school properties become popular, right? Like because once we're done with high school, we all split around to a million different things, right?
Exactly.
Because it's not just like college or no college. It's like, no, it is a lot. A lot of different avenues, and a lot of people, their life experiences diverge incredibly after high school.
Yep.
But high school follows a certain formula. And because of that formula, it's
a unifying experience. We all connect to it. Yeah.
So awesome. It is something most of us have this thing. And so I think about this a lot when I'm looking at storytelling, where it's like, I try to open in a human place. Not always. A lot of times I don't do it, but I do think about this a lot.
I think so, yeah.
And Spielberg does it really well in things, but I would I'd be curious when people are doing superhero movies of just trying to find ways to.
Well, that's why X-Men should be a show.
Oh, dude, yes, that's a great idea. Dude, no, you're right. I think there are a lot of properties that I'm like, I understand why, but I think if you had that dedicated fan base,
Spider-Man should be a show. Like Spider-Man is.
I want that cartoon. Yeah, the high school.
I know. I'm so baffled by that cartoon. I don't even know if I want it or not at this point. And also, like the Disney Plus offerings have been hit or miss for me, at least. I'm not going to say that, like, blanket statement they're all great or they're all terrible, but. It's a little dicey.
The X-Men TV show makes a lot of sense. That is something that if they started and you just actually got to it, and then it's like, that's fascinating. That's really interesting. Because like how? Well, let me ask you this. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So right now you're in charge.
Of X-Men. The X-Men part. Yeah.
Or TV show, not cartoon. TV show. Boom.
Yeah.
I'm giving it to you. Right.
Yeah. Live action show.
Where do you start?
I mean, so the question is. What would they let you do? What do you have access to, right? Because you could do Gen X, like you could do
Blue Sky.
Okay, because like I mean, you got to start. I would start with the 05. I mean, like I would do.
You have a 3-year commitment. You're going to get 3 seasons no matter what you do.
Yeah, we're doing the first class. Like we're doing the first original team, and it's got to be. But the thing is, like, there's such a beauty of having like a studio that is a movie studio that has access to TV, because then you could do like they fight Magneto in the movie. And then all the drama, all the fun stuff is in the show. Like Wolverine gets a movie.
High school, you'd have to do. Well, here. So this is fascinating to me because I love stuff like this. I like this kind of like problem solving.
Exactly.
Like this is the kind of problem solving where like you start looking at the math, and then you start Blue Sky. Yeah. And then you start whittling it away down to like what is actually real. Because I'm thinking, like, okay, do you start where it's like...
Is he recruiting, or are they already in school?
Is he recruiting, like, is the first episode them recruiting Jean Grey?
I mean...
Right? Like,
you know what I like?
Grey in? And here's my big question for you.
Yeah.
This is what I would do.
Yeah.
Do Professor Xavier and Magneto, are they still friends? And they teach you together?
I mean, why not, right? I think that's a great idea.
Have them together. Show how they had diverging opinions on teaching together in the first season, and then went their own ways. And then that's how you get like, and then you're like, oh, well, this one mutant betrays them, right?
Exactly.
Like, or goes with Magneto and it surprises you, right? Yep. Like, there are things you could do.
Yeah. I mean, you could do just okay. So you got Charles, and you got Eric or Max or whatever you want to call them, but like. Chuck and Max are teaching the Xavier Institute, right? There's been some hubbub about what they're going to call it. Obviously, they stick with the Xavier Institute.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it is a little bit like what First Class was like because I did
exactly, but you mix it up.
I've only seen First Class one time, so I don't remember it that well.
Yeah,
but it is a little bit of First Class, and I think that's okay. Like it's good to show that
people like it. People that's most people's favorite X-Men movies. So it's
you know what you do? You could actually throw in this. You get all kinds of stuff. You could throw in all kinds of characters. Throw wild cards in there, right? You could have like Professor Abensur.
Yeah.
Right. You got Professor Frost. Like you could probably make it where it's like. I mean, now I'm getting a little bit maybe too cute,
Right?
But I do think you could do a thing where it's like, oh, you think it's gonna be Magneto, but then it's like, oh no, it's Apocalypse. Like
Yeah.
he's the thing or whatever. Like you can get all kinds
Mm.
of
You know what
I,
I like?
yeah.
There's an old show I loved called Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and in that
Oh
episode,
yes, yes. Little
there's an
little known
episode,
show. I
little
have the
known
toy
show.
like right over here. Yeah, I have the Hasbro one they released recently. It was a 3-pack. It
Oh
was over.
yeah. There's an episode called "The Firestar is Born." It's one of the best animated episodes, and Juggernaut shows up in the middle of the show.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right. Juggernaut would be a great villain to put into the show because A, a little less expensive, and B, you get the brother angle because you've got Max and Eric
Yeah.
Max and Chuck who are friends, who are
And
brothers.
then Kane is like jealous of that
And
relationship.
Kane's jealous. He shows up and he throws a wrench into it, and it's like it also is a cautionary example. Maybe it artificially cements their relationship because it's like, no, I chose you over my like actual half brother. But
Yeah.
also, I've seen an example of what it's of what the threats are that I'm going to face. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's like it also allows you to.
Like Magneto is the one that takes Juggernaut down, and it's an example of like it's weird. It's like Xavier chose Magneto, but Magneto goes a little bit further.
Yes.
Right, he pushes a little bit harder, and it's like, oh, I've chosen this person; they're my best friend.
Right.
But there is a darkness there. Like you could do
exactly.
There are things you could do there.
Right. Or like, is there something wrong with me where I'm like, why do I have so many like, you know, all my brothers are insane.
You know, oh yeah,
or hate me.
Yeah, everyone he brings into his life eventually. Well, that's because Xavier's manipulative. He's controlling, and he's interesting because he's like a person who puts himself on the pedestal. Right? Like, I don't know. I remember reading comics when the whole Onslaught thing happened, and I was like, that makes sense.
Right, that tracks. Yeah, no one was. I don't remember anybody being surprised that Charles was the X.
Oh, I was reading at a store by then. People were definitely surprised.
Oh, I know they were, but like I don't remember. But like I only read comics alone. Like I didn't have any friends.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. No,
so for me, it was just my friends were you know like
the
Jim
X-Men
McLaughlin and they're like Jim McLaughlin and Gareb Shamus, like people who just the people who ran Wizard. I was like, these guys seem to know what's up.
Yeah, it's always a bummer with Wizard. Like I think people clown on Wizard a lot then, and they clown on it.
It's easy to do.
Clown on it less now than they did then. Yeah. But people, even at the shop, will clown on it. But it's like that was a very key element of that era of comics, and in some ways, it's really missed because I
bought that when I wasn't reading comics. Like when I wasn't buying comics, I was buying Wizards. You know?
Yeah, I bought Wizard all the time. Like it was, I think the first issue of Wizard I bought was like issue like 13 or 14. It was in the teens.
Yeah, same.
It was in the teens. Yeah, definitely. But then it was like after that, you start. I threw my Wizards in the trash, not because of anything bad, but it was like I was moving, and it's a magazine.
And they're magazines, right?
And they're magazines, so it's like it's the news. It's fine, right?
Yeah.
I was moving. It was when I was moving from Long Beach to San Diego, and so I was clearing a lot of stuff out. Like I was just like, this is the last day. The truck is already packed. What can I get rid of? And it was like, okay, I'm getting rid of this poster. I'm gonna get rid of this. I think the thing that I got rid of that was the stupidest thing I got rid of was the collectible cards that I had.
Oh,
I got rid of all of them except for one set, and so it was like actually 2 sets, and then I got rid of the rest. And that was something that I was like, I to this day regret. Like I was talking about this with Gen Mint Collectibles one time. We were talking about this, and we were talking about some of those like Marvel Masterworks sets that are worth a lot. I'm like, I had that. And I threw it in the trash because I had to move. And it was like, I don't have time. It was basically like, what do you do with this?
Right.
Looking back at it, I should have given it to somebody like, hold on to this for like 2 weeks. I'll come back and get it.
They're cards. They will store. Yeah.
When it is, you're moving and stuff. And I definitely finished my collection a couple times. That was the only time I ever threw it in the trash, though. Ever since then, I've either sold or donated.
I have too many friends who, when they were moving, for whatever reason, they were like under the gun and like they just rented a dumpster and like so much shit that was theirs was just in the dumpster.
Dude, that's so crazy. No, I always figure it out now. I would never do anything like that now. I would always figure out a way of selling stuff. But but man, San Diego was really fun to bring it all the way back around to San Diego. I had a good time. I was able to see some people. It was busy the whole time. That's one of the things. Like. The only regret I had when I got home, I was like, man, there's so many people I did not see that I wanted to see. There's so many people I wish I had spent more time with, like talking to you. And it's like, again, I got home and I'm like, that creator was there. How did I never see them? How did I never see them? But it was funny. Like James, James and like James is somebody I talk to every day, so it's not like I have to see him, but it's like my friend. I do want to see him.
Exactly.
And so we hung out on Wednesday together. We sat down, we had drinks, and we hung out, and which is the two of us. We kept getting interrupted, and so we were like, "Oh, not in a bad way, but like this is how it is."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, I will see you." So this is Wednesday afternoon. He's like, "I have to go to a signing," and I'm like, "Cool, I have to go take care of something. I'll see you later." Right? I saw him once after that. Once, literally, we were far away from each other. And we saw each other. We both went like this, went over, gave him a hug. We talked for a second, and he was on his way to go to the Eisners. And I was just like, good luck. I will, good luck. You know you're going to win, and I will see you. I will see you later. I never saw James again. And he texted me at 4:00 on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Are you still here? And I was like, dude, I am chilling at home right now.
I'm at home.
I'm at home. I'm sitting on the couch with my kids.
I had in and out.
We're watching DuckTales. I'm gone. But it was a really good show, and it was really great. I do have one question for you, and then we'll go because I have work to do today. Definitely. I have a comic book. I have a bunch of comic books to write.
Yes.
But so here's my one super random question for you.
Awesome.
In the last 3 weeks, have you seen a movie in the movie theater?
The last movie that I saw, I'm taking my wife to see Barbie soon.
Yeah.
The last movie in the theater I saw, it couldn't have been Shazam. Oh, it was Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah, it had to be Spider-Man. Yeah, because you saw me, dude. I'm in the same thing. I saw Spider-Man. This, I feel like, is I was thinking about this because when I was a kid, there were certain summers that were like the summer of movies, right? So it was like 1989. There was a ton of movies.
Oh my god!
92, a ton of movies. 94, a ton of movies, right?
Yep.
This summer, I saw Spider-Man.
Oh, Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones. Okay, so this thing, I still haven't seen Indiana Jones, and I'm like, I want to see Indiana Jones. I want to see Barbie. I want to see Oppenheimer. I want to see Haunted Mansion that came out today. I want to see Ninja Turtles. And there was a part of me that was like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play hooky on one day, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to watch all of them in one day. And then I was like, that is impossible.
That's not happening.
And it's not happening. I was like, maybe I go to the movies every night. Like every night for a week, just go to the movies every night. And I'm like, I also don't think that will happen. But here was the thing. So when I went, everyone's talking about seeing Barbie and seeing Oppenheimer at the same time, like watching it back.
Right.
How did you do this? Just in terms of time.
Well, the theaters are coordinating them. Like they're setting them
up. No,
I
know. But I'm talking about like literally saying,
how do I have time to do that?
Yeah, like how is this going to happen? I was like, I hear people doing it. I'm like, how are you doing this? I have so much to do. But I was talking to also my wife when I got back from San Diego. I was like, we will see Barbie this week, right? Every single screening was gone. Like I was at night, unless I want to sit in the very front row. I was like on my phone, and I'm like, okay, let's go on Wednesday night, or gone. Okay, let's go Thursday night, gone. I was like, well, let's go tonight then, gone. I was like, oh my god. And so I started being like, and I'm really glad that like Barbie and Oppenheimer obviously like kickstarted the summer and they're doing really well, right? Like it's awesome. Like, I'm like, great. People are going to the movie theaters, they're going to see stuff. It really kind of kicked that up in me, just even hearing about it. Where I was like, people are getting really excited going to the movies. It made me want to go to the movies. Like, okay, maybe I should get back into this. Because I used to go to the movies, I swear when I was a kid, I must have gone to the movies twice a week.
Yeah, definitely.
That is not the case now.
No.
But here was the thing that was surprising to me. So the other day, I was like, Haunted Mansion is opening this week. It's opening today. I'm going to go on a Thursday showing at 3 p.m. I'm going to go because obviously I'm obsessed with the Haunted Mansion. And I really want to go watch this movie. I'm going to support this thing that I've loved.
Yeah.
3 o'clock Thursday showing, sold out.
Oh,
I couldn't believe it. I was like, what?
Yeah, for Haunted Mansion, like
what?
Not that it's but seriously.
Yeah, how dare you?
No, for Haunted Mansion.
No, but it made me be like, oh my god, like
people are going.
People are going to the movies, and so that was cool. But yeah, I'm gonna try to figure this out. I'm gonna figure out something between now and the next 2 weeks. I'm going to try to see all these movies. So the next time we talk, we're going to talk about the spoiler for everybody. Next time we talk, we're going to mostly talk about Batman and Robin. But maybe we'll talk about a bunch of movies because if you see
Yes.
Barbie, then we can talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer, and we can talk about Haunted Mansion.
Right.
I didn't see the original Haunted Mansion. I didn't see the Eddie
The
Murphy
last
Haunted
one.
Mansion.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
either.
the last
No.
one in the theater. I watched it later. And actually, I like that movie. But I have with many things, I have a lot of opinions.
Oh, sure. Now you wrote the miniseries, right?
I did. I wrote the miniseries, and I just did a newsletter today about it. We just posted a newsletter where I talked about the Haunted Mansion comic book and how important it was that I wanted to do it because I've been pitching it for years, and they kept saying, "Oh," and then I was able to finally get it. What was funny about that was I found out, and I wrote the newsletter. Disney Publishing knew how much I loved Haunted Mansion. Marvel found out because we were doing one of these. We're doing a video thing for them back in 2015. It was to promote a couple Marvel things I was working on.
Yeah.
So I did a short video with them. And my old office, this is 3 offices ago, maybe more than that. In the backdrop, I had all this Haunted Mansion stuff. You could see it on the shelves. And so somebody at Marvel was like, really those Haunted Mansion is Josh. And so I ran to them and I was at a convention and I'm like, yeah, if that's ever an option, And they're like, well, we don't know, we talk about stuff. They had already done a couple things with Disney, but they were like, if it's ever an option, I would love to do Haunted Mansion. And so when the time came to finally talk about it, Marvel was like, we have one name. They were like, my name. They were like, we're going to try for you and see what happens. Because sometimes they have to go through a process, right? It's a process. And they went to Disney and they were like, we have a writer that wants to do it. And Disney was like, well, we want Josh Williamson to do it. Disney told them.
That's awesome.
And they were like, that's who we have. And they were like, yes. And I remember Axel Alonso told me, he was like, that has never happened before. It was it made our life so much easier. They wanted you, we wanted you, we were good to go. Let's
go.
Argument.
That's great.
And I actually found out I got the job while I was in Disneyland.
Oh my God.
Yes, I was actually in line for Space Mountain. But
if only you had been on the ride.
If I had been in the ride, that would have been super weird. I feel like that would have been okay, Grant is right. We're living in a simulation. I would be like, okay, all right, guys, the jig is up.
You got me. Yeah.
That's a little bit too much of a coincidence. Your storytelling skills are low on the nose. We got to rewind and redo some of this. No,
we workshop this.
Yeah, we gotta take over. Go back to the whiteboard on this one. No, I was in line for Space Mountain, and then I was in line for Space Mountain. They told me I got the job, and I was like, "That's great." And then 1 week to the day, I got the job on the Flash.
Oh,
literally, it was the next Tuesday. I was Tuesday in Disneyland. Got the email. You're doing Haunted Mansion, great. And I was like, "Oh man, my schedule's gonna be a mess." 1 week later, Dan DiDio was like, "Well, I remember it was funny because." I got the job on the Flash, from Jeff and Brian Cunningham, and they're the ones who made the job on the Flash. And then I saw Dan, and Dan was like, "Oh, by the way, it's gonna be a double ship."
Oh,
and I was like, "A double ship?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Oh, dude, I am screwed." And that has been the beginning of me being screwed since.
Yes,
just always writing too much. But speaking of that, I should go. I should go write some comic books.
Absolutely.
And but to be continued.
Definitely. Folks, thanks so much for watching. Josh, thanks for being here. We'll see you guys next time with an all-new episode. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and check out Josh's Substack in the description down below. So long, everybody.